Yo, what's good? Big Z here, and today I'm going to show you guys how to process vocals and how I process vocals from the start. So, sitting in front of me right now, I've got this big project file of all the vocal stems for my newest single, Alive, which comes out October 26th. So, it looks complicated, it looks like a lot of stems, but it's really just a lot of doubles and harmonies and stuff like that. So, when I get all these stems from a singer, I go ahead and put them in one project separate from where the song is. Then I process all the vocals in that project to save CPU, and then I'll just move one acapella file into my main project for the song. Alright, so I'm just going to focus on the first verse of the song and show you how I would process the raw audio file that she sends me. So I'm going to delete all these other stems for now. Alright, so here's what her raw audio file for verse 1 sounds like.
Yeah, tried getting over you. Total lie, maybe one or two. Apologize and it's overdue. Can we forget about this thing?
So the first thing I would normally do is go in this audio file and look if there's any really loud breaths or anything.
Total lie.
Like right there, I can go in and there's a little breath.
Total.
Like right in this part. And what I would do is mark that and move the gain of that section down. So I'll move it down a little bit so you can barely hear the breath in the mix, so it's not overpowering when I add a compressor later.
You. Total lie, maybe one or two.
So now it's more out of the mix. So I would go through and do that with every single breath in the audio file. So the first thing I do with the vocal file after taking the breaths out is go into Melodyne and pitch correct some things. So I'll open up Melodyne here. And I'll record this audio into it. So now I have all this audio in here. Some singers are more pitchy than others. This singer was really not pitchy at all and sang everything perfectly on pitch, where sometimes they already pitch correct some things before they send me the vocal files. But anyway, in this case,
yeah, tried getting over you.
There's nothing I really need to fix pitch-wise in this vocal, but if I needed to, I would do the same thing I just did, copy it into Melodyne, and then move the individual notes around to get them in pitch. But honestly, this is a really good recording that she made pitch-wise, so I don't really need to change anything in Melodyne, so I'll just turn that off for now. So the next thing I'm going to do is add some compression. That's usually the first thing I add after pitch correcting the vocals. To do that, I'm going to use the CLA Vocals plugin, and I'm going to turn all this off. I'm going to mess around with the compressor on this plugin because I like how it sounds.
Yeah, tried getting over you. Total lie, maybe one or two. Apologize and it's overdue. Can we forget about this thing? Yeah, tried getting over you. Total.
And I'm also going to give it a little more stereo width with this stereo feature over here.
Yeah, tried getting over you. Total lie, maybe one or two. Apologize and it's over.
I just want a subtle effect for that stereo feature, so I don't want to add too much. So now that the vocal is compressed a little bit, let's add some EQ. I'm going to use FabFilter's Pro Q2 to do that. And what I'm going to do is cut out all the low end we don't need and shape the sound a little more.
Yeah, tried getting over you. Total lie, maybe one or two. Apologize and it's.
Vocal recordings usually have a little too much mid-range or low mids in them, so I usually tend to cut them down here.
Yeah, tried getting over you. Total lie.
It also helps to add some presence in the high end around like 9,000, 10,000 hertz with the high shelf EQ.
Yeah, tried getting over you. Total lie, maybe one or.
But you don't want to overdo it. So sometimes after I compress it and EQ it, I'll add some tape distortion just to make it sound a little grittier and a little less clean. So to do that, I use Wave's J37 tape saturation plugin. I'll show you what it sounds like when I do it more extreme, but I just want a subtle effect on there.
Yeah, I tried getting over you. Total lie, maybe one or two. Apologize and it's overdue. Can we forget about this thing? Yeah, I tried getting over you. Total lie, maybe one or two.
So I just want a subtle effect on there where you can barely notice it, but it just adds a little bit of slight tape distortion to the vocal. Then I like to have my compression in stages on the vocal, so I'm going to add slightly more compression with a different compressor. For this one, I'm going to use the Renaissance compressor from Waves.
Yeah, I tried getting over you. Total lie, maybe one or two.
And yeah, I just want like 3 decibels of compression on this one. After that, at the end of my chain, I always add a de-esser to get rid of those harsh S sounds and like the T sounds that just cut through the top end of the mix. So I'm going to use another Waves plugin for that, the R de-esser.
Yeah, I tried getting over you. Total lie, maybe one or two. Apologize and it's overdue. Can we forget about this thing? Yeah, I tried getting over you. Total lie, maybe one. Apologize and it's over.
So you can go to a part of your vocal that has a lot of harsh S sounds in it, like this.
Apologize and it's overdue.
And then you can just loop that and mess around with the de-esser until it cuts off enough. But you just want a subtle effect. You don't want it to cut off too much of the S sound where it sounds weird.
Apologize and it's overdue. Apologize and it's overdue. Apologize and it's overdue. Apologize and it's overdue.
So I think that setting right there sounds good. Alright, so now that all that's done, we can add reverb and delay, which are 2 of the most important parts. So I'm going to go ahead and use send tracks for these. So I'm going to send this track to a bus, and I'm going to name it Vox Reverb. So now on this chain, I'm going to add a reverb and a couple other things. So I'm going to add some Valhalla reverb, and for that I'm going to use Valhalla Vintage Verb. And for the sake of time, I'll just use a preset, but I'll just go into this amazing vocal preset and maybe bring the decay down a little bit so you can hear what this sounds like.
Yeah, I tried getting over you. Total lie, maybe one or two.
So I want to control that reverb a little bit, so I'm going to put an EQ after it, and I'm going to cut out some of the lows and highs.
Yeah, I tried getting over you. Total lie, maybe one or two.
And to make that sound even better, I'm going to put a compressor after the reverb and the EQ. And with this compressor, I'm going to sidechain the reverb to the original vocal signal. So I'm going to go to expert mode and click external for sidechain, and then I'm going to go verse 1 because that's where my audio is coming from. Then I'm going to mess around with these settings like I did in my other video on reverb and make sure the reverb is ducking a little bit every time the vocal is singing.
Yeah, I tried getting over you. Total lie, maybe one or two. Apologize and it's overdue. Can we forget about this thing?
So now the reverb drifts in when she's finished singing in between lines, and now her voice cuts through the mix harder while she's singing.
Yeah, I tried getting over you.
Now we're going to use the same technique on the delay. So I'm going to make another send track. And this time I'm going to add a delay. I'm going to use a Sound Toys delay. And I'll use an 1/8 delay just to make it simple. Keep it wide. I want the mix all the way up because it's on a send track. I'll turn the feedback up a little bit. And now I'm going to do the same thing where I put an EQ after the delay to cut out some of the lows and highs.
Yeah, I tried getting over you. Total lie, maybe one or two. Apologize and it's overdue. Can we forget about this thing?
So it's really important with the delay to get the delay signal out of the way of the original vocal signal. So I definitely want to sidechain this. So I'm going to get a compressor after the EQ and the delay. I'm going to do the same thing. Go to expert mode, external, and then sidechain it to the original vocal signal. and just mess around with these settings until I get it ducking out of the way enough.
Yeah, I tried getting over you. Total lie, maybe one or two. Apologize and it's overdue. Can we forget about this thing?
You don't want your delay on vocals to be that loud in the mix. You kind of just want a subtle effect in the background to fill out the spaces in between the parts where she's singing. So that's pretty much all I do to process vocals. I'll show you what it sounds like again before I process them and after I process them. I'll turn all this stuff off.
Yeah, I tried getting over you.
And now with everything on there.
Yeah, I tried getting over you.
So that's how I process all my vocals. Hopefully this video was helpful to some of you. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Spotify below. Other than that, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.
Yeah, I tried getting over you. Total lie, maybe one or two. Apologize and it's overdue.